in politics, it's interests. So there's public interests, there's private interests. Where these two meet, corruption occurs.
So I
right?
want to...
And corruption is everywhere. Africa, Europe, the US, corruption is everywhere. So that's part of human nature. So the idea is to make sure the system is efficient enough and accountable enough for that to happen. Now, we have not reached the political maturity to have that.
Strengthening the state is necessary to protect citizens, even if it gives politicians dangerous control over the economy. I repeat, strengthening the state is necessary to protect citizens, even if it gives politicians dangerous control over the economy. If you agree with this statement, please step forward. All right.
So I think it's important to strengthen the state. When you look at strengthening the state from the perspective that we are releasing or relinquishing control to politicians, then you've already lost the narrative. I think when we look at strengthening the state, we first of all have to really implement transparency, because transparency is what is ideally so going to lead to a more stronger state system with leadership that has the people in mind.
I think there's something we need to differentiate or to identify, something called political economy, right? And of course we have a political economy, and then we have the state capitalism. We see the political economy encroaching onto state capitalism because the political elite tend to benefit from state capitalism. However, this does not mean that we do not strengthen our state capitalism or strengthen the state. What this means, we need to create policies or infrastructure. Let me not use policy because I know Stanley is going to come for me with that word. But we need to create maybe infrastructure. We need to create a pathway that creates accountability and transparency. And in this way, to prevent the political elite from creating their own political economy.
All right. Gabriel?
So what I can say about the state is, we first have to define what the state is. There are so many political structures that exist in the world today. We have communism, we have state capitalism, we have socialism, we have anarchy. So for me, the state that I would vote for is a sort of Marxian or kind of communist state, whereby policies are geared towards the majority of the people who actually are in the country. And that manifests itself in terms of socialism or progressive politics. So if we, from the beginning, create policies that benefit the majority, like supporting worker cooperatives, whereby workers are the people who own the means of production, and each worker can have a share and have a vote on how the actual company works. I think it will be more democratic, and in some way it will support the policies that the state are working towards. But in Kenya, we have a state whereby the state is claiming it's for the people, but most of the people who own the things in our economy are capitalists, and the majority of the people are locked out of ownership of the economy. So they do not have the capacity to participate in the economy to begin with. So even though we are saying we are democratic, we have kind of the democracy to change nothing. No. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting takes. This is a very interesting prompt. Personally, I don't like it. Because you're saying strengthening the state is necessary even if it gives politicians
dangerous control.
Yeah. So this is simply giving a message that we are able to tolerate a strengthened state. There is a possibility, even if the politicians have dangerous power over us. But I believe in a system where the nation is strengthened and politicians don't have dangerous power. that balance not can, should happen, and that's what should be in place. And I think, yes, the nation needs to be strengthened, because when you play on unsupervised grounds, unguarded grounds, weak grounds, at the end of the day, the ground will fall and it will collapse. So yes, the strengthening needs to happen, but no, politicians should not have dangerous power over the economy while we are at it. So we need that coexistence to happen. Let it not be like an effect we are getting, side effects, negative effects. No, we don't want that effect. That is the work of the state. Make it happen. Thank you.
All right, let me have the disagreeers join us.
So I think we've agreed I'll go fast. And hopefully, we are only two, so maybe we'll be the voice of reason in this argument. It is interesting that 4 out of 6 of us would stand on the agreeing side of this prompt, especially knowing that we come from Africa, a continent where we have very strong governments, and we have a lot of human rights violations across many countries on our continent. Montesquieu, when he wrote about the separation of powers, argued that we need to have 3 different arms of government. We need to have one arm of government that makes the laws, one arm that is the judge, and another arm that interprets those different principles. And his argument for having 3 separate powers is for the purposes of checks and balances. No one individual arm of government would have the power to make the decision of the day. They would be checked by the other arm, and the other arm would check them. Therefore, no one arm of government had absolute power. The problem with absolute power is that eventually it corrupts. You may sit there and think, let us now have this communist country with these policies that are being made by the executive or by the government, and these policies will benefit everybody, and at the end of the day, we will fight poverty. The problem becomes that many years later, you will have a North Korea at your door. You will have an executive that says, this is where you can go, this is what you can do, only invest here. You will have China, where you try to say no to a certain policy and you disappear from the face of the earth. A strengthened state is problematic because too many politicians holding power, too many elected representatives holding power, eventually they will refuse to come out of the situation they have created out for themselves. With no one able to come up against them and say, no, do not make this policy. With no one who is able to come up against them and say, no, we do not agree with the direction where we are going, then you will have anarchy at your doorstep. So the question to ask is, yes, you may have economic development because you will have us all speaking in one language and moving towards one direction, but at what cost?
I have probably 3-4 things to say. One, we need to look at Kenya in the context of yesterday, we just turned 62.
Yeah.
When we talk of state capitalism, we're talking about China. China is how many thousands of years? Today, China is the 2nd biggest economy in the world. But you see, that's not them kuomoka, no. That's them regaining their initial position. China was the richest country in the world for millennia. Do you understand? So when we talk about Kenya, we need to understand the first generation with a common culture is Gen Z. That's our first generation. China has had that for thousands of years. So there's a common way of doing things. For state capitalism to work, there have to be less disagreements on what needs to get done. We don't have that. So what then a strengthened state translates to is, number one, more money for politicians to steal. Because, let's try and contextualize our history. So today, the economy is probably about $136 billion. Today, our biggest companies, parastatals, were somehow government funded initially. But there was a reason for that. As a young country, there's no an abundance of capital somewhere to institute everything. So if you had to wait for some private investor, Safaricom would not have been made. I mean, Safaricom would not have been created. Safaricom was a department in telecom, right? So for Safaricom to become, for Kenya Airways to become, for Kengen to become, for KPLC to become, they needed somebody who can take the risk, and number two, they have enough capital to foot that 30-year plan, 50-year plan, so on and so forth. So it has served a purpose. But the problem is, our generation today, how many millions? We are millions and millions and millions. We need millions of opportunities to allow the young people to get some bit of social mobility, to move from lower class to middle class, so on and so forth. The second thing is, a strengthened state lacks the filter for dumb ideas. You understand? So let's contextualize that. Last year, now, 2023, the current regime, including the governor, they were in America under Biden. You remember?
Yeah.
So these guys show up in America, they're meeting, you know, Apple CEO, Microsoft CEO. What are they pitching them? Right? What are they pitching them? Oh, come create a data center in Kenya. Do we have enough electricity? No. Are we investing in that? No. 2 weeks after they land, these guys are on top of Land Cruisers, and the biggest idea they have is a chapati machine. Do you... What kind of a joke is that?
I would like to come in and just share on a point he said. We say by strengthening the state, it means that we are putting money into people's pockets.
Yeah.
And of course, I think you mentioned something about how the brilliantest idea that someone came up with was a chapati making machine, right? And let's look at capacity, not only in the sense that we are strengthening the institution, right? But capacity means also capacity building in terms of putting in leaders or electing, you know, well-learned individuals. And let me give an example here. In Kenya, we have parliamentarians who are former actors, former actresses, right? Do they have a degree in political science? Do they know how to formulate policies? Do they know how, when they come into an institution, how they should run it for a long term, right? So when we're thinking about strengthening, you know, state capacity, or strengthening the state, let's look at it also in the sense that we need to put in the right people. The way you learn it, the way we're here and we have a group of well-endowed knowledge, is the same way we need to ensure that even our states, as we are, you know, in electing people or putting in people, they're actually people who have substance.
Now, the problem with that,
I think building on that, and I do think it's important that she's mentioned that you're setting the precedent that, one, corruption is inevitable, and that's a disease that has spread across the African continent. It's something that we, as Africans, have forgotten to from the statesman. These are elite employees. We are the people who put them there. So we have the right to remove them there if they misbehave. You are correct when you said for the first time we have reached that point where we are a generation with a common interest. We are moving towards the same direction. Recently in Mandamano, we were all shouting, we are not tribalists. One tribe. And that was beautiful to see because it does validate the fact that for once the state is coming back to the state people and not the politicians. So I think setting the precedents that, at the end of the day, we're just putting money in their pockets is forgetting that we have the power to put them there. We have the power to remove them there. The state is for the citizens, not the politicians.
Now that's entirely true, but here's the problem. In practice and in principle, that's correct. In reality, that doesn't exist.
Free
that's
markets don't exist in reality.
It doesn't
either.
exist. Here's the thing. Today, would you say Koome is an incompetent Chief Justice?
Are we going to get an answer?
Would you? No. Would you? No, just a minute. Would you?
I think.
Would you?
I think.
No, just a minute. Would you? Yes or no?
I think it's important.
No, yes or no? Yes or no?
Stanley,
what is the capacity?
Yes or no? But here's why. See, most of the progress
competent or not, she is an employee.
Just need a minute. Here's why. When you look at Mutunga, right, and the amount of progress and transformation he has instituted in the judiciary, right? Does it mean that he had more power than Koome? No. But he had the intention and the political will to make sure public interest comes first. Here's the issue. In politics, it's interests. So there's public interests there's private interest. Where these two meet, corruption occurs.
So I want
Right?
to...
And corruption is everywhere. Africa, Europe, the
It's
US,
understandable,
corruption
and
is
I
everywhere.
do not
So
deny.
that's part of human nature. So the idea is to make sure the system is efficient enough and accountable enough for that to happen. Now, we have not reached the political maturity to have that.
And that's why we say
So
transparency.
we work with what we have as we try to re-engineer what we need.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
Stanley.
transparency
Okay.
can only occur
Shake
with
it,
a check.
shake it.
Exactly, and
Check.
that checks comes in. Here's why. Here's
I
why.
want-
You see, the political class in this country.
Stanley.
Oh, boy.
No. Ni sawa. Kidogo tu. Tupumue, to breathe. I want Javira to come in here.
Yeah. So I wanted to defend a point whereby you say that when politicians come into like leading the state in terms of state capitalism, they always end up stealing the money.
Right.
I want to give you an example.
Give me an example.
It's 1929 in USA, and the US has come out of the Great Depression. The Great Depression was actually caused by bankers who are speculating on the price of assets
Right.
in Wall Street. The banks have failed.
Right.
There's no money in the economy.
Yeah.
The economy has collapsed, and people in society have lost faith on the public institutions that are supposed to protect
Right.
them. And then FDR is elected. And
Right.
when FDR comes in, he looks at the wealth disparity of the American citizens.
Right.
And what does he do first?
Income tax.
He creates a wealth tax
Right.
of 95% for capital gains of more than $1 million.
Right.
That greatly equalizes inequality from the beginning. The second thing it does,
Right.
the state spends on infrastructure projects and projects that bring back the workforce that were laid off after companies failed. And how does that happen? He didn't wait for the taxes from the rich to come. He directly spent into the economy using the Federal Reserve.
Right.
And that brings people into the workforce to do productive things for society, like growing food, building roads, creating affordable houses when people were thrown out of homes. And then his magnificence doesn't stop there.
Right.
There's World War II about to come. What does he do? He reorganizes the society such that the private companies work for the government to produce tanks, to produce uniform for the servicemen, to produce guns. And that is how America and the Soviet Union, together with the Allies, won the war.
Now here's a problem. Here's a problem with that.
Yeah.
When a Great Depression happens,
Yeah.
banks are not a representation of capitalism, number one.
Yeah.
There are banks in China. There have been banks for as long as human beings have existed.
But they are not the same banks. Banks in
Some form of
China
banking.
are national banks. Banks in America are private banks. There's a difference. You can't just say that there's the same banks.
Right.
You know.
Now, here's the thing. You see, Kenya has not gone through the Great Depression. So you cannot use that as a pretext to giving power to the current regime. Because that's exactly what you're trying to do. Now, the problem is, banks only allocate capital. But banks in themselves, they don't own any capital.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the crookedness of the bank caused that.
But where do the banks get their capital from?
From businesses.
No.
From
Banks never get
businesses.
Let me tell you.
Money does not come from central bank to the bank. Your bank has an account at central bank.
You know, I'm talking
That's how that
facts.
works.
Look. You can just take your phone and go into the Central Bank of Kenya website.
Right.
At the monetary policy, you will see that banks have a reserve ratio of 3.25%.
Reserve of what?
Okay, wait.
I
What?
want to
Deposit.
say
Deposit of who?
Commercial banks.
Nah, deposit of you, me,
I'm
him,
supposed
his
to answer.
business, her business.
Give me a chance
And
to
that's a
answer.
fact.
You're giving me questions. Let me answer them. Reserves come from the central bank. They don't, and it's you can just open your phone and check. No, look.
Okay.
You have a phone.
Okay. No.
I can even bring the audience. You
Kindly
can just
check
open your
that.
phone.
Kindly, you should check that.
No.
Kindly.
I'm gonna let me hold that there. As
But we need to check that though.
We're gonna check
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, please.
You guys can go back there and Google. Let's reset. That's enough for that prompt. Relying on the free market leads to innovation and growth, even if it leaves the poorest people behind. If you agree with this statement, please step forward. You have exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I think I'm going to speak on one thing, innovation, and what creates the environment for innovation to thrive. M-Pesa would not have happened if we would have allowed some Mzungu investor to come and do the whole inclusion, financial inclusion bit, because that was a need, right?
Yeah.
The amount of transformation that M-Pesa has done for this economy was because Mwai Kibaki and the government at the time actually listened to a good idea and decided to back it. And the only way for us to innovate, the only way for us to grow is to innovate out of our problems. Now, lacking unga is not a problem that you get to innovate around. For our economy to move forward, we're talking about creating opportunities for millions of individuals. The only way to do that is through innovation. So every other problem you see, it's for an innovator, an entrepreneur, to come up with an idea, monetize it for the benefit of our collective nation.
All right.
Right. To answer this one, I will rely on what Adam Smith said. Adam Smith was the father of capitalism, and he said, individual pursuing of self-interest can lead to economic growth. In other words, what he was saying, when you look at human beings, the one thing you can count on is their greed. As long as they are greedy and they are interested in pursuing their own goals and they can benefit from the pursuit of those goals, then use that and you can do anything you want to do with them. You are not working. Half of us here, actually not even half, 100% of us here do not go to work every morning because we like the jobs we do. We like them, yes, that's why we go, but number two, we are getting paid. That's the most important thing. The day we don't get paid, we will not appear. The panelists who are here, we are not being paid, but we are not just appearing for free. We are appearing for the bragging rights. You know, so on Monday we have a story to tell where we were on the weekends. So greed is like death. It's one of the things that you can bank on when it comes to human nature. So when it comes to free market capitalism, when you're arguing for it, once you take greed, the only human thing that you can bank on, and you tell people go forth and conquer, they will use their greed and their self-interest to invest and make profit. And that's what you need at the end of the day, for them to make profit. So utilize the one thing you are sure about human beings, greed.
That's very true.
All right, no? Let me have the disagreeers first. Let's listen to them and then you'll get a chance to go. All right.
I think it's such an unfair thing to put our faith in something such as motivation. I think if you're gymming, we are told don't put your head on motivation, put it on discipline rather, right? And so it's okay that, yes, a free market would drive innovation, but it's not the only thing that can drive innovation, right? And let's look at Kenya, for example. Who created the cure for malaria? It was the Kenyan government through KEMRI, right? So it's not necessarily that it has to be a free market space. So we need to come up with long-term goals that we need to follow so that we are not only depending on motivation. So if we want to get here as a country in 10 years, what do we need to do now and for the next 10 years to get where we need to get to, rather than just saying, let's just leave it to our greed, let's leave it to what we like, what we fancy, what we will get from it. Because at the end of it, markets might change. Yes, we might think that our greed will drive us to a better, innovated world, but look at what our greed has led us to right now.
And I'm really...
Let me go with Zanara, because I know this is close to your heart. We talked about it there, so I'd like to, yeah.
Allow me to begin by Cheke. It was interesting you said maybe you may be the voice of reason. Why the maybe, why the doubt? Yes, you're the voice of reason, but that doesn't disqualify everyone. Everyone is a voice of reason, just differently. I don't think the one baby Nani is harmful because, honestly, even from theory, not even from anything political or what, I think tuko wengi kwa hii dunia. And hata wanasema shakum si matusi, hata places za kuzika zinaisha. So we can't take out people, but we cannot bring more in. I think that even may sit as you know, just something that is, I think, easily accessible to the mind. I feel like we should all remember that a nation is not a marketplace, it is a promise. You mentioned death. Let's consider that. If we do consider that, then that means all this, the taking of resources, the occupying of everything, at the end of the day, death. Years later, no matter how long it takes, the world will come to, you know, the resources you have right now won't benefit you after you're not in this country anymore. I mean, you're not in this world anymore. When we're looking at markets and when we choose to utilize greed, we can also call it thirst. And when greed continues and continues, the thirst, it gets to a point where you fight each other for the water you see there, only to get there and realize it's a mirage. That's the end game of greed. Because you'll price this, tomorrow you'll want more. Greed has no end game. And if we choose to be powered by greed, we will collapse sooner or later, no matter how long it takes. So we are putting the state in control. The only reason we find the state controlling is something harmful is because of the people that are controlling our state, the people in the government. If it's a healthy government, then state capitalism becomes so much easier because we are not doing it to control people, but to consider everyone. And that is how a nation thrives, when the heartbeat is a human-centered capitalism. Yep.
I really like the fact that you brought about Safaricom and the late President Mwai Kibaki. It's wonderful that even you agree that government backing market innovations and initiatives leads to better transformation even within the privatized market and even with government. Because M-Pesa is big. M-Pesa is global right now. We do not deny that. But that greed is what is going to drive innovation. We have so many parastatals, so many ministries that are centered around innovation. Off of the top of my head, NACOSTI, National Commission for Technology, Commission for? Science, Technology, and Innovation. It is mandated. They are mandated. They have been given that right to lead in research and design and development of innovations within this country. I think when governments now focus on such parastatals or such ministries, it means that on the young talents, the young minds, the young skills, the young innovations, because all of us cannot innovate out of greed. All of us, if we decided to come up with a product, who is going to be the consumer? And then you're also looking at people as customers rather than citizens. Safaricom made money transfer easier across the globe. Kitambo, you'd have to do Western Union. You'd have to go to the bank. Sijui, do money orders. Safaricom, yes, while private, has a lot of and it is ultimately serving the people because it's made life easier. And it was done by, I think, a young graduate who, at the end of it all, was shortchanged. Why? Because the market saw the possibility of Safaricom, paid him, I think, a really small cash out, and dipped and ran with it. Had he known, that it was going to be as big as it was 10 years down the line, do you think he would have sold?
Stanley, you're going to respond. You're going to respond. You're going to respond. I have to let him speak first, and then you're going to respond.
Yeah.
Gavira, go.
Yeah, so I wanted to continue with the discussion here.
Right.
As we have seen, markets, I can even say, based on material evidences. I do not speak in terms of idealism. I speak in terms of evidence. Has so far not brought any innovation?
What?
Not any per se, but is killing innovation. Let's say, let me give you an example.
Now come again.
When Safaricom, let's say a big monopoly, decides to crash competition, is that innovation? No, it's not innovation. When monopolies go and get loans, cheap loans from private banks because they have large capital reserves, which means they get loans, cheap loans, as compared to people who are starting businesses.
Right.
And then they take those loans to buy out those businesses.
Right.
Is that innovation? No, it's actually killing and stifling innovation.
Yeah.
So you actually do not have any evidence per se that without state backing, and actually Safaricom is a state-backed corporation.
Your point is
because,
actually my
no,
evidence.
no, let me finish first.
Right.
Until recently, the government was the largest shareholder of Safaricom.
Right.
It's true.
Right.
And look at Safaricom, all the innovation it has brought.
Right.
So you do not have any actual material evidences to back your argument.
I need a minute.
But neither do you.
I need a minute. I need a minute. So, Safaricom today it is what it is because Safaricom government backed it. But here's why. Safaricom, the biggest part of their value system is infrastructure. Now, the network, when you go to anywhere in Kenya, right, you will find Safaricom network. Why? They have heavily invested in that infrastructure. Airtel has not. So, for you to be able to do that, you need a lot of capital, right? And that capital has to have a horizon of 30, 50 years going forth, right? Private capital doesn't wait that long. So, based on our 62 years of independence, we needed government to do that. But here's the problem. Going into the future, we need 100 Safaricoms. We need 100 M-Pesas. Today, I'm pissed at Safaricom being sold because here's the problem. Tomorrow, the future of transactions in Africa, because you have to understand, by 2050, 60% of the global workforce will be in Africa. Labor is a very important part of the economy. Labor is a very important part of granting value to capital, right? For you to create opportunities, labor is a very big part of that. Now,
can I help? So, wonderful. You mentioned something about Safaricom being a monopoly, and I want to kind of tie it into what you said. You are anxious about Safaricom being on the chopping block, being on sale. If Airtel...
I need to explain why. Let me explain why. I just lost the train of thought. Just a minute. Let me finish. So, the reason why I'm pissed is because M-Pesa is the future Visa and MasterCard for Africa, right? So, what the government has done is just handed a platter to Vodacom. Vodacom is a subsidiary of Vodafone. So all executive decisions from now henceforth will come from London. Right? Now, here's the issue. Now, in concept, selling Safaricom is not a bad idea.
It's not.
But the problem is, who do you sell it to? Right? Why not list it on the Nairobi Stock Exchange and each one of us gets a share by M-Pesa?
And if
Why
Safaricom...
Why not do that?
I want to paint a picture.
Stanley, let her answer.
I want to paint a picture.
Right.
Safaricom is state-owned.
It's not state-owned.
No. I'm giving you a hypothetical. I'm painting a picture. I want you to imagine that Safaricom is state-owned.
Right.
The state has equally backed Airtel to do the same thing, probably money transfer, make communication, money transfer, financial transfer easier across the globe. The globe. We would not be in a state of anxiety about Safaricom being on the chopping block if there was more funding from the state or backing from the state for other telecommunication companies.
That's not the
because
responsibility
then
of government.
we have a backup.
That's not responsibility of government.
No,
anytime you have responsibility,
you've talked about infrastructure, and I agree with you. Safaricom is I was in Garissa recently. Safaricom has internet posts and pillars, or what are internet masts.
Yeah, the mast.
All the way in Garissa.
It's true.
I had 6 bars.
It's true.
How many bars?
It's true. But why?
But if we looked at it and did the hypothetical, communication services across the country, we would not have the problem of infrastructure because we would then connect it to the government to do the infrastructure. You have 10 bars everywhere you go.
Here's the problem. Every time you add responsibility for government, it means it costs you as a taxpayer more. Government does not generate money on its own. Government either taxes you or borrows money.
I give it
Okay,
to
Not
give me a
necessarily.
chance to speak, please.
All right,
Please.
Gavina.
Let me ask you one simple question. Before there was ever money, you know.
Money has existed for
No,
a long
no, no,
time.
no, no. Please, I'm speaking of
Phones.
Kenya shillings.
What?
I'm speaking of Kenya
Kenya
shillings.
shilling is a currency.
Please, please.
Acha ongee.
Give me a chance.
Pe dakika moja.
Yeah. How can the government tax money that didn't exist to begin with? Where
Money-
will it have come from? I'm asking you a simple question. Where will it have come from
Right.
for the government to tax if it did not exist?
Money, government taxes transactions government taxes transactions.
You're
Is
not,
the issue.
you're not answering the
Is the
question.
issue.
I've just asked you a
What's the
question.
question?
Money is an inventory of goods and services available in the economy. Money in itself has no value. It's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Right? It's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So you cannot tell me I produce a piece of paper
Yeah.
and that means I'm producing value.
No.
That's the same reasoning that has been the single most biggest challenge of West Africa.
I don't think
So
Their
let me
currency is
give you an
produced in
answer.
France. But here's the issue. Here's the issue.
I
But
don't
you see,
think
that idea
necessarily
is,
that
the idea
Let me
is,
give you
nah, I
an
just
answer.
need to finish.
I think you have a
Let me
problem
finish.
with tax paying.
But let me
No, no,
finish.
And we all do.
But
It's
let me
okay.
finish.
Let me give you an
Let me
answer.
finish.
Okay.
You guys are
Okay.
Let me finish.
You have a problem
But
with
let me
paying tax.
finish. Let me finish my
We
point.
have to let him finish because now it's 3-on-1.
Let me finish my
He's
point.
interjecting
But let me finish
everything
my
we are
point.
saying.
Okay, so he asked you, Stanley.
Listen.
So he asked
listen.
you a question.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you fully responded
No,
to his
I've
question?
not fully responded.
Okay, you have exactly 1 minute to fully respond, and then you can go.
Right.
Okay.
So
All right.
60% of currencies in West Africa are produced in France. In exchange, they give 50% of their export. Export is the actual good. That's value. The piece of paper they get from the France central bank is a piece of paper. It means nothing. And today, they're trying to change that. That's the reason you see the whole coups and all that happening. Because, look, money is inventory. It's a representation of value created. So goods and services. Money has no value. It has no inherent value.
so. I don't.
Exactly. So you're wrong.
No, let me finish.
Okay.
So let me give you the history, proper history of money, which you can also check in the CPK website. So before there were any Kenya shillings in existence in Kenya, there was actually the Indian rupee was used by the colonizers to trade between East Africa and its other colonies because the rupee was a dominant currency because India was the biggest colony of Britain.
They use pounds, my guy.
Let's
Man,
let
you
him
can just check.
They use pounds.
let him
You can
finish.
just check this.
That's a lie. No, that's a patent lie, though.
Let's see
Let
what
him finish and then you can respond.
Let's see his thought process. Let's see
Right.
where
Let's
he's
go.
taking us.
Na watu wafungue hiyo website ya CBK.
So there
Yeah.
was the rupee that existed. And
Yeah.
then when World War I occurred, since the rupee was a sort of exchange rate backed currency, it was exchanged for the British pound. So it had a fixed exchange. When the World War I occurred,
There.
the price of silver dropped. So the price of rupee increased because it was a fixed exchange currency. And then the colonizer said, this does not benefit us because the price of the British pound also went down when the price of silver went down. So what did they do? They created it's called what? Central Bank, EACB, East African Currency Bureau, to create florin and operate in the East African economy. So the florin started operating around 1923. So when Kenya gained independence and most of the other East African nations gained independence, the florin was still existing throughout the economy, but it wasn't giving the government of Kenya authority because this currency comes from a colonizer. It's still, it doesn't belong to Kenya. So what did Kenya do? It created the Central Bank of Kenya. And the Central Bank of Kenya bought the florin currency that was in the Kenyan economy at the ratio of 1:1 by money printing. And this is true because we have evidence that the whole 6 trillion of our economy was backed by, until recently, less than 10 kgs of gold, which means that our currency is actually paper money.
That is patently wrong. Everything is just
You can respond now.
I'll have a
This thing is in the internet. You
Let
can
him
just
go
respond.
first.
I do not think that-
Let him go first. Let him
Let
go
me
first.
respond.
And then we end this.
Yeah, he'll go first.
Yeah,
Let me go
I'm
first.
just responding and then asking a
Yeah.
question. When I was in school, I was told we have to be very afraid of speaking and just saying words.
That's very
Because
true.
unfortunately, I mean, you have given us this entire history of the Kenya shilling and florin and all that.
Yeah.
But now my question is, how does all of that tie to here?
Now, here's why that's a lie. Now, let me break down how that's a lie. Listen,
No, one minute,
listen,
one
bro.
Let them go, and then you can respond. Okay. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
how did colonialism set up in Africa? Right? The British pound was the main currency of issuing credit. So, how did Mzungu settlers settle in Africa? They get credit from a bank. That credit is issued in pounds, right? That's why when we were being given independence in 1963, right, the agricultural, what's it called? ADC, Agricultural Development Corporation of Kenya, was loaned by the Queen 12 million pounds, I think, thereabout, to issue loans to Kenyans to buy out settlers, right, in Kenyan Highlands. So what then happened? The government of the day took that money as personal, right, as a personal kitty, and they then displaced the settlers at the time. So that's how these families got all this land and all this. So it's, whatever he's just said is a patent lie. Your story
So
Jabba,
let
bro.
me ask you,
Your
where
story
does your
Jabba.
evidence
We're
come
not
from?
arguing that.
Where does the evidence come from? I
My
pointed
guy.
out my evidence. My evidence comes from the
From what?
official website of the Central Bank of
Really?
Kenya.
All right.
Really? Screenshot that shit.
Okay.
Screenshot.
No.
Screenshot that shit. Nah, screenshot it.
No.
Now we
okay.
need to see that.
No. Okay. So this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna have one of our team members pull up the CBK
Exactly.
website
And
as-
fact check everything he has just said.
We're gonna fact check everyone.
Exactly.
Now.
Yeah, fact check.
Now.
everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we should do that.
So that's what we're gonna do as we're continuing with the debate. Okay. So let's reset for the other prompts. Government regulation is crucial for public safety, even if it slows down development and increases costs. If you agree with that statement, please do step. Anyone?
Okay. So I think whenever governments get involved in production or manufacturing, it does offer a better hand, especially for the people, because ultimately the government is supposed to serve its people. So I'm looking at a case example where Umea Sugar was dumping its waste products into the Nzoia River, if I'm not wrong. Government intervention assisted in ensuring that was sorted out and cleared out, and we were able to restore what was once a very heavily polluted area. And it's something that, you know, most companies do, not just Mumia Sugar. If you leave the free markets to run wild and free range, they'll do whatever to cut costs, they'll do whatever to meet, they'll do whatever to get the profits. At whose cost? The communities that are living near them, the people who the environment. So I think it's really important that as much as we are accepting free markets, we are accepting competition and innovation and technology and all of these things, we're able also to, you know, keep them in check.
Indeed, I don't think it will slow down development. For example, we have in the medicine or the health sector, we have the Center of Disease Control. If we left the markets to just create whatever drugs they want to create, you can just imagine the effect it would have on humanity, on ourselves, Kenyans. So I think it's important to have such regulations. Of course, we have something else like KEBS, right? We've seen counterfeits, people who make fake drinks, fake alcohol, fake stuff, which then we are, for them, they're after the profit, but the state is looking at how best can I give my the statesman or our country people the best things.
All right. Zanora.
Interesting. First of all, I'd love to say in an Africa where we are trying to decolonize, I think you are enablers of colonization. Because when we are talking about anything to do with our country, with our continent, and all we are quoting is China, all we are quoting is USA, we are just continuing in the footsteps of our colonizers and our oppressors. And what we want for Africa and for our country is to come up with a strategy away from what colonization taught us. So instead of following what they do or their ideas, or we are solving things affecting us, we should not use them as reference. Tuseme USA sijui ninasikia sijui hata ilipata uhuru, I don't know which year man, kitambo sana. Na yetu ni 62. So we cannot compare our affairs with the affairs of a country that has been free for the longest time. Coming back to this.
Yeah.
A strong country without strong constraints is not a safe place. It is actually you placing ourselves in a path of danger. And a good government is not the one who gives power without thinking. It is the one that, actually how strong a government is defined by how well they distribute power. That's all.
All right. Okay, I wanted to, I can say, clarify your point. The reason why I can say we are comparing these other nations is not to be like them, but to learn from them. Because at the end of the day, no one knows everything. You can only observe what another person is doing to know what you can do better or what you cannot do. So we're talking about regulation. So I support regulation even in the banking system. We have to regulate how banks are giving out credit. Which sectors are they giving credit? In Kenya, the most, I can say, blessed sector where credit flows easily is in land. Actually, we do not give easy credit to factories. We do not give easy credit to doctors who are researching on drugs. We give it to land speculators so that they can buy land in the middle of a desert and then create, I can say, a road and wells, and then artificially elevate the price of that land so that they can make gains worth 1,000%. So they bought the land at around 100,000 shillings an acre, and then after doing some menial infrastructure jobs, they sell it at 10 million. So the price of land artificially grows, and then you find that somebody who was actually born in Kiambu or somebody who was born in Kitengela cannot afford to buy land where he was born or she was born.
Yeah.
I think we need regulation on how banks give out credit.
All right.
Yeah.
Surprising to see you here on this side.
Yeah. When I began, I said I am center-left, so I can move, when it is proper to do so. And this one is a matter of principle, really. And even when I speak about it, I speak about it from experience. There was a case I handled, or I continue handling to date, and it's from South Sudan. And there's this company from the Netherlands, oil and gas mining company. So back in the 2000s, when South Sudan was still fighting for independence from Sudan, there was a lot of rebel fighting. And this oil and gas company decided to manipulate the system. Because they knew that there was war and they needed to prospect for oil in South Sudan, they came in from the Netherlands with their money, and they were able to set up operations in South Sudan. But as they were setting up operations to try and evade, the government restrictions that were already in place, they started funding the rebels within South Sudan. And the atrocities that were committed in that country during that period of time, thanks to that company, continue to be felt by so many South Sudanese. Some of them are bred here and they're living here in the Republic of Kenya. Others are living abroad, thankfully. But it tells you one thing. In as much as we want to give companies the power and the freedom to be able to invest as they will, greed is a motivating factor, yes, but it has to be fettered by the state or by whoever else. You cannot let companies run away with their money however they want to. If you do so, you will find yourself in a place you'd never want to see. It's the same situation in Congo when you talk about blood diamonds and you see what companies are doing in those countries. That Congo as a country has never been able to settle because there are certain powers that continue to benefit from the conflict in that region. regulation is extremely important. Things like safety and health are not luxuries. You need to be able to protect employees. You need to be able to protect, the citizens of a country. You cannot put profit over people at any given point. But then the question at the end of the day would be, or I think now the most important question would be, how do you now come to regulation? How do you arrive at coming up with policies that everybody agrees on? That would be the most fundamental question. But is regulation important? Yes, extremely.
Stanley, please join us. You are a lone wolf on this one.
Yes.
Tell us why you disagree.
I'm supposed to get 5 minutes, though. 5 minutes for each, right? Yeah.
Just start. I'll stop
5
you.
minutes, right?
I'll give you 3.
5.
I'll give you 3.
Okay, so I think we should start by what informs the regulation, the policy makers. What influences the policy makers? Powerful individuals. So when we think about the nature of investment in Africa, it's always foreign direct investment, right? Anybody who thinks about, and that's why, right, very good friend of mine, Selma, that each and every business is given tax incentives for 5 years not to pay tax, so on and so forth. That's only given to Mzungu businesses, true or false?
It's all businesses in Kenya.
No. When you set up a new business, which is mostly foreign direct investment, you get those tax incentives, true?
Like even a Kenyan government can get that tax incentive. It's all companies. And the funny thing is that if you're a foreign company, you're actually taxed more than a local company. For example, local companies pay, is it 30%? Well, I think for the international companies, it should be 35 there.
35 of what?
35%. For example, again, if you're a consultant, a Kenyan consultant, I will be taxed 5% withholding tax. If I'm a foreign consultant, I'll be charged 20% withholding tax.
Now, consultancy, that's a service, right?
Well, in each case, what I'm just trying to put across is that a foreigner will be taxed more than a local person.
Now, here's the issue. Foreigners, when they come into this country, they go into some things they call special economic zones. Those are tax-free zones, true or false? Right? True or false?
I'm not going to answer. One
That's
of
true,
the panelists
right?
should answer.
So here's the issue. The people who can get to the policymakers get fast pick to pick what gets regulated, what policy gets implemented, and basically you're just giving the lever or the opportunity to anybody who can raise enough capital and they can get to the right person. They can bend and twist this policy to fit their economic interests, right? So let me give an example of what deregulation actually does for the country. In the year 2002, Kibaki gets elected, right? What does he do? He drives deregulation of the banking sector. What does that translate to? Banks were literally hawking loans, right? Because before that, for you to even access a bank account, you needed a reference, some other person to sign for you, some other person to sign for you, right? But by deregulating that system, then the bank is able to lend to as many businesses as possible. Businesses is what grows economy, because employment is not real. Government does not create that much employment. Formal corporate employment is not that much. We need millions upon millions of opportunities. So the idea is the main system of allocating capital is through banks. You overregulate the bank, what does that mean? There's less capital in the economy. If there's less capital in the economy, then the businesses are not able to create enough jobs for opportunities of every young person. So the idea that, we are failing as a country, because what she has spoken about, that's a failure of KEMRI, right? KEPS. Right? The failure you've talked about is the failure of the government of South Sudan to make sure they put public interests of their people first, right?
Yeah.
When people talk about the failures of government and then the solution is reward them with more power, what are we doing? The situation we are in today is not that there's not enough regulations. Parliament makes regulations every other week, right? there's institutions. So instead of driving efficiency of these institutions, we say, no. Let's tack on the regulation. So let's give the opportunity of these officers in these institutions the ability to extort money from businesses, right? The ability to trade favors with those investors, right? A friendly investor, you come to me, you want this regulation passed, you give me $1 million shillings, boom, boom, boom. Your competitor, that's it, you're effed. So we come back to what is the purpose of this regulation? If at all it's the idea that you're protecting normal mwananchi, that should be passed by parliament, right? Those are the representatives of the people. The idea that what you're proposing by more regulation is creating an administrative state. That is a cancer, because it only grows, right? It only grows. You ask NEMA today, oh, we need more money for this. You ask, we need more money for this. But they don't tell you the money we've been given has driven efficiency to this point.
Okay.
Do you get my point?
Yeah.
So it all comes back to what is the purpose of this regulation? Yeah. Is to help who? Because in practice, I'll give you an example. You see, when the Minister of Agriculture gives a directive that 90 kilogram of maize is supposed to retail at 2,800 shillings. Mm-hmm. What happens? 2 weeks later, a guy walks into the Minister of Agriculture. He walks out with the signed and stamped, approved import license of maize. Meli inangoja Brazil, inangoja tu kuambiwa toka. That maize lands in Kenya. NCPB is supposed to take that maize at 2,800 bob. In return, the farmers in Kitale and all across the country, they get effed because there's oversupply. So is that regulation really to protect the farmer? Is that regulation to protect the consumer? Because the price at Naivas doesn't change.
Yeah.
It's the same. So but who gets the money?
The
guy who got the import license.
The regulation protect the market.
What are we doing?
1 minute.
Is very interesting.
No, 1 minute.
Okay.
1 minute. 1 minute. I want him to respond, and then we're gonna go to you, Chege.
Right.
The reason I want you to respond is because you brought up banks, and he's talked about what happened in 2002. So I want to hear what you have to say about that,
please,
and then we're gonna go to Chege.
So the regulation is not a binary thing. It's not like there's 100% regulation and then there's 0% regulation. Like it's a sort of analog kind of arrangement whereby there can be too much and too little and then enough. When Kibaki deregulated banks, he did not deregulate everything. He just reduced over-regulation. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But what created the over-regulation?
Huh?
What created the over-regulation?
Anarchy?
Exactly.
Can I just jump in
Okay.
and sorry to cut you off, and I really want to hear how you explain the banks and the banking system. But I think you're looking at regulation in a very on the end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You're looking at
Indeed,
it.
yes.
It's a line.
Yeah.
It's a line,
How's
and
the
you are
line?
like all the way towards the end.
Yeah.
And I want to give a couple of examples.
Right.
One, government regulation in the Congo. He's mentioned the Congo and the atrocities that are happening in the Congo right now.
Right.
It's not just blood diamonds. We've seen it happening in South Africa. We've seen it happening in Nigeria. Heck, we've seen it happening in Kenya with prospectors. Currently, I think there's a company that's doing large-scale oil mining in northeastern. Do we know about that? No, we do not.
We
Is the
do,
government
actually.
regulating around that?
Yeah, they do.
How sure are
You
we?
need a license to
Okay.
extract oil.
Now, you've also mentioned what's it called, the private sector and its rules in government.
Right.
But before I get there, I was going to say something wonderful about the Congo. So the Congolese government, we've seen the genocide and the atrocities happening there with children working in lithium mines to run iPhones, by the way. So you have to ask yourself, at what point does capitalism become too much?
Now,
at what point does
right.
the bottom line become too low?
How does
at
it-
wait. At what point,
Right.
how many more people need to die
Right.
before we say the profit margins are now acceptable?
Now, here's the
and
issue.
then, wait, hold on, I'm not done. So there's that aspect of once you see people as commodities
Right.
under consumerism,
Right.
you're always going to be thinking about the bottom line. And what we're trying to say is the government's role is not to interfere with that market, or when we say regulation, we are saying you guys can do what you want, but there has to be limits. Is it affecting our people? Is it affecting our environment? Is it affecting how we run ourselves? Is it affecting our communities? I think that's what we mean when we say regulation. And now I try to bring it back and say, you've talked about maize. Why should we be importing maize when we have large tracts of farming in Kitale, Western region? Our country has been the largest maize exporter in the previous years. Why are we in a state where we are literally depending on imported food? Because of those corruptions within the government free market systems. It's not the first time. It's not the first.
You just said government free market stuff, right?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
It's not the first time we have had private developers having an invisible
Right. Right.
Yeah.
run by greed, as you
Right.
so said.
Right.
At one point or the other, greed is always going to be the running factor, especially if we are humans.
Right.
But it is not the first time. Even within ourselves, it's not international investors alone. Even within our country ourselves, we have businessmen powerful enough to control government policies, government regulations. So when we say regulation, we are saying government is transparent, government is for the people, and we are not looking to enable the free markets any further than we've already given them leash. We've given them so much rope.
I think
All
it's
right.
a problem. I think it's a
Stanley,
problem.
I want you to respond to Shege and her together,
Okay.
so that you conclude.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So after listening to you, Stanley, argue about this point, it's interesting to note that you're not saying no to regulation.
No, I'm not saying no.
Your problem is over-regulation, to the point
Over-regulation.
where it strangles companies and innovation and creativity.
Right.
And also the development of poor regulatory policies
That's
that
one.
are influenced by corruption and all that.
Right.
So your problem is not regulation. Your
It's
problem
who gets
is the
to regulate.
evils of the regulations.
Exactly.
And I was very careful when I made my point earlier.
Uh-huh.
Regulation is necessary. How we get to regulation is where the question is where the money is.
Uh-huh.
So we deal with that, we'll be able to deal with all the concerns that you're raising. But it's very clear, you're not saying no to
Yeah,
regulation.
exactly.
Regulation is necessary.
Now, here's the issue.
And
Here's
now
the issue.
let me just finish.
Right,
Let me
right.
just finish.
No problem.
Now, who can regulate?
Right.
That is the question.
Right.
If you are going to have any efficient regulatory policies in place,
Right.
you would need to have consequences
Right.
and someone who would be able to follow through with
Right.
those consequences.
Right.
The state, unfortunately, in the system of things that we have,
Right.
is the only one with that kind of power
Right.
that can create a policy, that can implement that policy, and can punish you for not following that policy.
Right.
No one else
Right.
has that kind of
My
influence.
problem with regulation is this. It's a stick. Who gets to hold this stick? A certain guy who sits in an office, right? A director of a parastatal, a director of a department. That's the guy holding the stick. Now, if he gets tilted this way by 1 million shillings, you come through 2.5, you tilt this way, you tilt this way. Now, is that regulation for the public interest, or is that regulation for private enterprise?
So
That's the issue. Now, it's the problem.
That stick
It's the problem.
is not being
It's the
held.
problem. All of us here, we can agree that there's corruption. But then again, on this other end, we assume that the individuals who hold these positions have your best interest at heart. That's never the case.
The reason you and
So,
I are defending free
the issue is
markets
this.
is because we are talking about decentralizing power. That is the whole argument that we have been dealing with from the very word go.
That's very true.
This stick that is being held by this public parastatal
Right.
does not mean he holds it absolutely.
That is
He
the thing.
holds it, yes, but there are other people holding his hand.
Who?
By the time he
Who?
throws
Who holds the
that
hand?
stick,
Who?
other different players,
Walk me through who?
other different companies that are in this market that
Right.
we are all in business together with,
Right.
other arms of government are
Right.
still present in the scene.
Here's the
so
issue.
before he
Here's the
strikes
issue. Here's the
that
issue.
stick,
Here's the issue.
there's so many
Here's the
other
problem.
different people who will be able to check
Here's the problem.
that
You
kind
see,
of power.
the story I've just given about NCPB, right? It has happened for the last 20 years, 30 years. Every year it happens, right? When we talk about corruption, it's like we just landed in Kenya. During COVID, you remember the whole procurement of the PPEs and all that. Who got first pick of those tenders? Who got to decide that? Now, today, what is the consequence that those people who made those decisions, what consequences have they faced today? Because you've told me there's somebody holding the hand. Who's that person? What is their interest? Do you understand? So the problem is this. You guys anticipate that somehow we expand government, expand responsibility of government and its institutions, but in return, we get efficiency and we get to sing Kumbaya. No.
And that's
Human beings, as you have just said, they're driven by two things. Greed and fear. Now, when you talk about greed, don't look at it at the negative thing. It's a spectrum. On one end, there's ambition. The other end, there's gluttony, right? But it's all greed, right? But that's in every human being. So you give this person the incentive to hold the stick and be like, okay, this guy wants to invest $10 million in this country. I can get $1 million from him. But if I pay him with a stick, I get to ask for $2 million from this other guy. So the idea is you're basically handing power to individuals because in this country, the fastest way to get to wealth is through public service. That's not a lie. You don't get any person who... This study that was done the other day. 125 individuals own 78% of our wealth. How did that come about? Because you know a guy. Right?
Wait a minute. It is 35 people over 4 billion people. No, 4 million people in Kenya, and that's not even the full number. And that's the whole point. And I've been trying to say this since the beginning. You're setting the precedence that corruption is something normal. It shouldn't be. It should not. Listen. And you said something that I agreed with, and I agree with you on this one aspect where you said for the first time in this country's history, we are a generation that is looking towards the same direction. You're setting the precedence that corruption is normal. It isn't. No. It isn't. So even as you sit here and you say,
no, it's not normal.
It's not
supposed to be normal. I have worked for them.
That should not be normal. And when he says, that stick you're saying,
right.
When I said, at the end of the day, those government officials, right. they are employees. The same way you are at a job working,
right.
We should be holding them accountable. They are at work. You mess up, you get fired.
Question.
No.
Isn't that easier said than done?
That's the issue.
No, but I'm not supporting anyone. I'm just asking.
But it has been done.
Now, Lisa,
nothing in life is easy. Let's start there. Nothing in this life is easy. And yes, easier said than done. Totally agree with you. But Rome was literally not built in one day. Yeah. So if we say we cannot look at Jalango and punish him for his actions and remove him from his seat, not that we are saying we want to remove him. I'm sorry if there are any supporters. I'm just saying you look at someone who has performed impunity after impunity after impunity in government, we say, hey, why are you doing this? Go home. That is our right as citizens.
I need to respond to that. I need to respond to
that.
that.
No,
easier said than that.
After he goes,
okay,
you're going to respond and then we're going to close this out.
Look, Stanley, that's the irony of capitalism. When we live in a society whereby the only motive that brings about production is profit.
It is.
Yeah.
That's the only.
That gives door to corruption, because corruption is an easier way of getting profit.
My guy, no.
Look,
profit comes from creating value.
No, Stanley, let's let him finish. Let's let him finish.
You know, let me say, if I have money,
right,
and then I can use this money
right.
to influence votes in parliament,
right.
so that I can deregulate my company and maybe crash unions or, I think, get tax cuts.
Right.
That accounts as profit on my balance sheet.
And that proves my exact point. Why do you get to do that?
No.
Now, why do you get to do that?
Give me a chance.
Because there's a guy.
Stanley,
hey, man.
Stanley, 1 minute. Let him finish and then you can respond.
Man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good. It's okay.
And that's why I'm saying that's the irony of capitalism. Right. Capitalism is like a small child. It cannot walk by itself. It needs somebody to hold it.
Right.
You know? And that's why we are voting for state capitalism.
Right.
Because when the only agenda for society is to gain more money.
Right.
What stops corruption? What stops bribery? What stops revolving doors?
Right.
You know?
I think there's a factor here that we need to also bring into mind. There's socio-economic, right? Socio-political. And this thing we're talking about, corruption,
Right.
maybe runs down to what is our social norm? What's our socio-economic norm? Do we say that we want to progress our economy through corruption? What is our socio-political norm? Who are the people we put in power? What are our political economic stuff, so that we can understand how can we best structure even our regulations, as Shage was saying, to ensure that they serve our state or in our country. And just to mention also, for example, here in Kenya we do have KEBS, we'll also have KRA. So we'll have a mixture of things that even NEMA comes in. So before, as a business, you'll find that before you're able to transact, there's several regulations you have to checklist. So of course that also controls the power that no one regulatory body has in too much power over the market as well.
Can I respond to that?
You can respond in the next round.
Wow,
I'm sorry.
Bro, I just need 30 seconds.
I'm sorry. Let's reset.
That's not fair, though.
I know.
You guys got more.
No. I'll make sure you get a chance to respond. It's okay.
It's okay.
Wow. Can we have a glass of water?
Yeah.
For Stan. Here we go. The state should implement a progressive wealth tax on large multi-generational land holdings and excessive private capital, using the revenue for targeted wealth redistribution to address historical land injustices. If you agree with that statement, do step forward. Tax the rich.
The rich.
Wow. You left your brother again.
He has my sister. So.
That's good. All right. Agree as you have the floor. Go. Zenora, let me start with you. Tax the rich.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Allow me first to circle back to what you said. I didn't mean don't borrow examples. I just said don't borrow examples from our oppressors. And maybe we'd say, okay, they oppressed us, so the world moved on. They have great ideas, but the ideas will never serve us because we are the source of resources. They are the exploiters of our resources. Their ideologies can never work. Instead, it will just make us dive deeper into the net they just casted a long time ago. And we find ourselves like colonization never ended. The chains were just handed to a black man and the cycle continues. Also, I would love to say that when you made the point of when the state is, I think what you're trying to say is you're actually agreeing while also not agreeing. So all your points are you're actually saying what they're saying, but you're just trying to put it in a different lens if you listen closely. I believe you can be more patient than you're being right now.
I haven't even talked.
Let me cook.
You get to respond.
You're already murmuring. That's
You'll get to
what
respond. You'll get to respond. Continue.
The state should implement. First of all, I don't even think there should be lands or resources that are owned by families like Delamere and all that. Because there is no way, when you go to Naivasha, there's an island called Crescent Island, and it's owned by a British person. So I am advocating for those resources to even be taken away from them, but because it can't be done easily, then they should tax them as heavily as they can. Because there is no way a Kenyan will go to see something, or let's say the island, and the money that is gotten out of there, a big part is going to somebody who doesn't even belong here. So the benefits of our resources are being taken by people who don't even belong. So if we can't take it away from them, let's tax them as much as we can.
All right. All right. Who wants to go next?
So let me speak in terms of the history of Kenya. So when we gained independence, there was no actual vote of how we are supposed to, let me say, subdivide Kenya amongst ourselves. Some of us were uneducated. Some of us were greatly educated. Maybe you worked for a colonizer. You don't choose. You just find yourself in these positions. So, based on that situation, 62 years later, some of us cannot afford land, some of us cannot afford food, and then some of us can overspend on anything they desire. Yet, from the very beginning, we did not start at the same level independently, everyone. We did not start at, there were some places where they were greatly developed, there were roads in Nairobi, there are some places there are no roads, there are some places people had to cross rivers to go to school. These are things people should consider, Kenya belongs to all of us. So if the current model of economics does not work for the majority, Kenya right now does not even create more jobs for the people who, are unemployed. Like the people who are unemployed are more than there are jobs. That means something is not working for everyone. This thing is not working for everyone. So we should sit down and create a model that actually works for everyone. And the first thing should be a wealth tax, because you find that some people who hoard some large tracts of land, and then people are forced out of shanties or places they live to build affordable houses. Why can't we tax this land out of people who have them and do not need them to build these affordable houses first before displacing these people who live in shanties or temporary houses and throw them in the streets? There's a way we can do that, and wealth tax is one of those ways.
All right.
Yeah.
The reason I argue for free markets is because I think free markets are the easiest way to end inequality. Because with a free market, you tell everybody you're starting at this playing field, compete, get the cake. But at the same time, I believe in social equity. I believe in everybody having access to the same thing. I do not think that we should have billionaires. If we have billionaires, something wrong happened along the way. Someone did not compete fairly for them to become billionaires. When we look at the world right now, we don't have that many billionaires. So what exactly did they do to get to that level? Number two, even when they become billionaires, it's not as if their wealth helps in the improvement of anything. Recently, Jeff Bezos went to the moon. Who benefited?
No one?
Did anyone benefit here? Did he bring you a rock from the moon? No. But he went to the moon. So why should anyone have that kind of money to decide that the earth is not good enough? Let me now travel to space. There's a question there. There's a problem. There's a problem somewhere. It doesn't really meet the aim of having a free market capital economy. We have not. Nobody has benefited from him going to the moon. Again, there were those billionaires with the Ocean Gate scandal, the ones that went and died in the sea. Who did that benefit? Why should someone have that kind of money to play around with? So I do think, let everybody compete, and then let's introduce a wealth tax. They have benefited from the system. Let them, let the money be taxed, let it be called back, so that everybody can still have the opportunity to get to those levels. We cannot have one billionaire. Let us all be billionaires with the free market capital system.
All right. And I want you to use our Kenyan context as you're responding to this.
Our Kenyan context. Okay. First and foremost, I'll start with eat the rich. Now,
Wow.
that's a very strong statement, and it does pull, kidogo, getting there, does pull, where they literally were so angry at, let's dumb it down, let them eat cake. We're coming to you, we're telling you, we can't even afford bread. Tell me, go eat cake, let them eat cake. And that's where we are getting in terms of 2025 in terms of this generation, because we have seen billionaires do the most outrageous things. Well, we also look outside our windows and see Mama Mboga struggling to sell skuma wiki. We look outside our windows and we see someone waking up as early as 2 in the morning because they have like 3 jobs. We look at ourselves, we're like, today I might not eat breakfast and lunch, but I'll compensate for dinner because I have to pay fare. We are struggling. 125 people in the whole of Kenya versus how many are we? I think a little over 42 million people. 125 versus 42 million people. We're not able to afford the basic necessities. 2 years ago, tulisema we cannot afford it. That hasn't changed. Yet, whenever I pass Thika Road, I see Northlands in all its splendor. That's huge. That's huge tracts of land. Whenever I'm going to Western, I see Naivasha, huge tracts of land. You're told, hey, hiyo ni ya mzungu mmoja. Ama hiyo ni ya familia ya so and so. And so, I will say we were royally screwed post-election. And guess what? It wasn't the British effing us up. It is our own countrymen who effed us up. And so you find land, possessions that were supposed to be repatriated back to the people, which Mau Mau fought for, because the whole basis of Mau Mau was fighting for land in the northern highlands, in the what were they called, the White Highlands. Did that land ever go back to its people? Who owns that land? We all know who owns that land. We just don't want to admit it. But they're here. They're leading us. Their children are amongst us in very big universities, obviously not within the same tax bracket. Because guess what? They are much richer than us because they benefited from a system that, by the way, still is very much so ingrained in Kenya. Colonialism never ended. Colonialism never ended. We are still so much under the British rule, we just can't see it. And so when I sit here and say, tax them all. In fact, instead of taxing me for housing levy, I'm saying go to the guy who has 10,000 acres in Nanyuki and say for every 1 acre you have, lipa tax. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Okay, let me have the disagreeers come by. Barbara, I'm very surprised that you're on this side.
Yes, well, I think for me this one beats the virtue of hard work. You know, I mean, those guys have worked hard to gain what they have gained. They have learned their financial principles, you know, how to gain the wealth that they have gained. It doesn't necessarily mean that they used crude ways to get there. So that's my basis, right? Again, also, I don't believe that currently, you know, I think that in Kenya we are very rich in terms of taxes. It's just that these taxes are either going to the wrong places or are being embezzled, right? So if we are able to manage, I guess is it tax management? And I think when you mentioned this, I thought about back in the days of Jesus. You remember Zacchaeus, who used to tax people and take double for himself, right? I don't know if that's what KRA is doing, like taxing and then putting some for themselves. Yeah, I think that it wouldn't be fair to say we want to take things back to ground zero. I mean, if that was the case, being a believer, God would have ended the world, right? But I don't think it's a matter of, you know, going to fast bases. However, we can put in some regulations and some ways to ensure that that which is collected, one, is used in the right manner. And maybe I would like to give the example of our late President Mwai Kibaki. You know, he was able to change the economy from the then regime, right? Not necessarily with, you know, going back and saying, taking back our land, taking back our country. No, he didn't do that. But he put in necessary macroeconomic and microeconomic measures that enabled us to grow as a people, right? And not necessarily attacking families. Because these families, you know, it takes a lot to build families. And it takes a lot to build a legacy of a family. And each of us can, right? Not to say that this person started ahead of me and, it gives me a disadvantage. And I would like to also mention something my father used to tell me. He used to tell me, like, Barbara, remember, that which you're not born with, God always gives you the opportunity to attain throughout your lifetime, right? So that's my belief.
All right. I'm picking up on a very big contradiction, but I'm hoping that the other guys are going to bring it up. Let's go to you.
Right. So, I think we have a very wrong foundation of what actually makes a billionaire. So, he just spoke about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos today is worth about $230 billion, right? But he owns less than 10% of Amazon. Amazon has a market valuation of $2.3 trillion. 2.3 trillion US dollars. So in essence, Jeff Bezos has created 800 and something billion dollars of wealth for other people. Now, today, Kenya is $136 billion, our economy. For us to get to somewhere close to first world, we have to get to $500 to $600 billion, give or take. Now, how do we get there? I just said we need 100 Safaricoms, we need 100 M-Pesas, we need 100, every other big business you can think of, we need 1,000 of them, right? So, out of the taxes, out of the growth that comes from that, we can then tax and do affordable housing. We can then tax and do affordable healthcare. We can then tax and do free primary education. The idea is, right, just taxing the wealthy, that's not a solution. Because what they do, they just shift their capital to some other country. You cannot force somebody to keep their capital in this country. Here, and that's just one part of that. The second part of that is we have a very wrong orientation of what the future is like. The future billionaire in this country will not be the person who gets to acquire 100 acres of land or 10,000 acres of land. No. Jeff Bezos is not Jeff Bezos because he owns 2 million acres of land in the US. No. The idea is you need to own part of an idea. Intellectual property. That is the main vehicle of creating value for millions of Kenyans. The US has about 11.8 million, thereabout, patents registered in the US. Singapore has 70,000 patents registered. China has 19 million patents registered. Kenya, we have 2,800. So what we're doing, we're basically arguing how to subdivide the small cake we have instead of growing the cake. How do we grow the cake? We need more Jeff Bezos. We need more of those people because this is the issue. Now we can talk about, oh, this guy has too much money and all this and all that. America today has the biggest middle class in the world. That's why they're the biggest market for everybody. China manufactures for the US, European Union manufactures for the US. Africa, we export to the US. Why? They have the biggest market. Why do they have the biggest market? They have the biggest middle class. How do you create the middle class? They have the biggest middle class in the world. You can fact check me on that. Today, of that $24-25 trillion of an economy that the US is, how was that created? Is to allow as many Jeff Bezos to prosper as possible. That's how you do that, because how many jobs has Amazon created? How many jobs do you think KEMSA will create next year?
Good question. Answer that question.
How many jobs do you think NEMA will create next year? How many jobs do you think Safaricom will create next year?
All right.
Safaricom today has reached a point of saturation. You understand? Most of the value in Safaricom today is in M-Pesa.
All right.
Right?
Stan.
So when we think about the future, we need to stop thinking about what to tax of what is. The cake we already have is small. The idea of making, for you to get an opportunity, for you, for me, for the next person, is for as many of us to have access to that tradable asset.
When I was making my point before, I was very careful and I said, nobody ever becomes a billionaire in a clean way. There's always something. Now, I have no issue with wealth and hard work. You know, my argument is a free market economy. You should be able to benefit from the hard work that you put in. So if you can make wealth from it, well and good. However, when you look at any person who becomes a dollar billionaire and you try and see how they have made their money, there's always a question mark somewhere.
Right.
The Barclays brothers, for example, the people who came up with Barclays Bank,
Right.
they made their money from slavery.
Uh-huh.
Bezos,
Right.
Amazon is $1 billion company.
Right.
However, there are multiple allegations of worker manipulation and worker exploitation. People working long hours,
Right.
receiving very little money compared to the kind of profits that company is making.
Right.
Alibaba, he came under heat some time back
Right.
because he was pushing for a 12-12-6 work system. Work 12 hours a day, 12 months a year for 6 days a week.
Right.
Meaning no leave, no break. It's just productivity, productivity, productivity.
Right.
When you come to the Kenyan context, when we got independence, unfortunately, many people in our political class were able to grab things for themselves,
Right.
to reward themselves for the work that they had done for fighting for independence.
Right.
Many of the settlers who came in and lived in this country, and some of them continue to hold large tracts of land to date,
Right.
took that land away
Right.
from our grandfathers and our grandmothers,
Right.
land that was ours.
Right.
So anytime someone becomes overly wealthy, there's
Right.
always a question mark.
And that's the issue.
Something is wrong somewhere.
See, now that's a problem.
Now, you said something very important about the cake is here,
Right.
all right?
Right.
And we need everybody to have access to that cake. Unfortunately, billionaires have half the cake. The rest of us are fighting for the little crumbs that are holding back.
Now-
And that's where we are saying, tax them.
Right.
Nobody should have half the cake.
Right.
No one at all.
So
we should be able
Right.
to ensure that everybody has a crumb,
Right.
if at all.
Gavia.
So I wanted to also add on top of what Chega said. So when you look at Kenya, we have agreed there's a lot of corruption, yes? And the Kenyan currency is used nowhere else apart from Kenya. True, still. So it means these people who wrongfully steal money that would have gone to do public works and help people, spend this money into the economy, our own economy. And their spending isn't necessarily productive because they spend on their own desires, which brings about this wealth inequality, you know. There's some people who will choose to spend their money on buying a $3 million Porsche, you know. The person who sold the Porsche actually worked hard, you know. He looked for customers, what. But he does not answer the question that this money wasn't supposed to go and buy a Porsche or a house in Lavington. It was supposed to go and build a school in Baringo, you know. So this guy benefits directly from the corruption that occurs in our economy, you know. And he also, in the end, becomes a billionaire. But when he looks at his own self, it's as though he did the right thing. But when you look at the economy as a whole, he didn't do the right thing. So he shouldn't be taxed because it's, in terms of it's morally right, but he should be taxed because the material conditions that were needed to be satisfied with this money weren't satisfied.
All right.
You're talking in terms of
Redistribute the wealth.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go with Zenora because I want us to Maliza with this side, go to this side so that we can conclude.
Thank you. I would first love to say that just because there is an excessive amount of something doesn't make it normal. So if corruption is in excess, that makes it the presence of abnormality. It doesn't make corruption on its own normal. Most of these people who have generational lands, let's say, they didn't work, okay, I wouldn't say you didn't work hard, I say they worked hard unfairly. You know, they tortured, they bypassed, laws or something like that. So they earned it unfairly, and us giving them the leverage above us, that is super unfair to us. It makes us part of their system instead of growing with the system. We should not be fighting for the small cake. We should not share the small cake. The wisest thing to do is to find ways of having the cake be bigger, or even finding ways of, even if it's the same size of cake, but different, so that people can benefit from it differently, but not one cake and all of us are trying to feed from there. And like you said, some have half of it. Now when the other half remains, it shifts from being distribution, and then it turns into a battlefield. So people are fighting. It's survival for the fittest. And with survival for the fittest, it's full of chaos, it's full of people not being fair, and it's full of a lot of, like, I think criminalistic ideas come to mind when we feel like we are moving with survival for the fittest. Yeah.
All right. Barbara, limit it to a minute. I beg you. Yeah?
Well, I think for this case, I recede.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Did we change your mind? Did they change your
I
mind?
just receded because maybe it's a personal preference that I recede.
All right. I'm gonna skip you. You're gonna finish it.
I'm getting high extra minute.
Huh?
High extra minute. I'm getting a high extra minute.
Sorry?
Am I getting high extra minute?
No. You're studying capitalism. Mnaona capitalism. All right, go.
Okay, I made very bold statements to begin with, so I'll try and be a bit calmer. I still do stand with what I said, and you're right. We cannot look at Jeff Bezos and say, wow, that's wonderful. I want to be like Jeff Bezos when I grow up. Don't get me. I am the first person to say I love money. In fact, I want to be wealthy. And money will change me. That's for a fact. But there has to be limits. There has to be limits, because I cannot be accumulating money and my neighbor is dying. And here's the most beautiful thing about being a planner. Whenever you're doing the topographical, looking at city developments from from GIS perspective, like satellite imagery, you're able to see. So what I noticed when I was studying was every rich neighborhood, think about it, Runda, Nyari, Kileleshwa, but where the wealthy in Nairobi stay, there's always a slum nearby. Always a slum nearby. Why? Why is that? Because at the end of the day, you cannot live in isolation as a billionaire. You still need cleaners. You still need gardeners. You still need cooks. You still need service providers. And when is enough enough? And so when I say billionaires shouldn't exist, I mean, sawa. You get to 1 billion, we give you a certificate and a medal, and we say, congratulations, you've won capitalism, go home.
All right. Okay.
I think
1 minute on the clock.
All right. I think the idea that provides opportunity for most Kenyans is redirecting that amount of capital we're trying to tax into venture capital. Because, as I said, land is an asset of the past. The future is intellectual property. Simple and clear. As a millennial, as a Gen Z, you're not getting 1 million shillings from a bank to go buy a piece of land in Kitengela and hope to be wealthy. That doesn't do anything. You get 1 million shillings, right? You have an idea. That idea, you're able to monetize it, generate 2 million shillings. Then you can employ 10 people, 20 people, 30 people. Out of growth, then we can finance the social protection infrastructure. We talk about affordable housing and all these types of things. It comes down to, where do you get the money? Because government does not generate money on its own. So the idea is, we talk about corruption and this and that. Corruption exists because there's a system underlying it. And that system is government. We reduce the size of government, we reduce the size of corruption.
Okay.
That's how that works.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm just gonna take it, and then I'm gonna throw it later on to the people, and you can clarify, you can ask the question, and you can defend your stance. All right? But for now, I want to thank you guys for being a proper panel. I think a lot of the people who've come here today, they've gotten to learn a lot from everything that every one of you has gotten to contribute. And that's very nice. And the one thing that I've picked up is that in all of this discourse, the central point is that we're all thinking about how we can advance our population, our people. It might be in different ways, but the end goal is how can we have a better society. For you, it's let's create more opportunities for people through employment by making sure that the people who have good ideas are supported fully to explore those ideas.
Yes.
For the state capitalists, we're looking at creating a more social kind of country where if you don't have access to the same opportunities, then we find a way for you to get to that. So again, the central point is people, which is a good thing. And we hope that you at home, and that's what you've gotten to pick up, and you've gotten to learn something new. But from us today, see you guys on the other side.